what medications are you on? And I was like, what? Not really on anything. Now remember, I am not against prescriptions, but I said to her, well, I'm on bioidentical thyroid replacement and some other thyroid replacement that do require a prescription, but I don't really consider them medications in the sense of statins and other big pharma products, metformin and other things. And she basically looked at me and said, oh, well, just wait until you get up to be our age. They're about 5 years older. I didn't say anything, but I thought, how sad that this person just expects that everybody's going to be on a lot of medications when they reach a certain age. She's not wrong, because unfortunately most Americans are on a lot of medications. And I realized in that conversation that I've been in my little bubble with a lot of my friends who feel the same way I do, and certainly working with functional medicine practitioners and different groups online that I'm part of. You seem to think that everybody thinks this way, but it's really not true. This is True Voice Unfiltered, the podcast where raw truth meets real transformation. I'm your host, Daria Anne, ghostwriter, content strategist, and holistic health warrior. No, I'm not a doctor, nurse, nutritionist, or any kind of medical professional, and this show does not dispense medical advice. I'm just an informed patient sharing what I've learned on my own healing journey. I also interview accomplished authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, and functional medicine practitioners who are transforming lives. If you're ready to break free from the sick care system, reclaim your health, and transform your life, you're in the right place. Let's get unfiltered. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 14. In this solo episode, I want to talk about a couple of recent experiences I've had that relate to my best-selling book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, A Guide to Overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and Autoimmune Conditions with Functional Medicine. My journey really has been a long one over several decades of my life, probably every decade of my life, beginning with Weight Watchers at age 8 to where I am now at optimization with Hashimoto's, and actually I'm at thyroid and hormone optimization thanks to functional medicine. And I was telling a friend today that sometimes I feel like I'm in my own little bubble where most of my friends feel the same way I do about holistic health and looking for solutions outside of the system. Share my disgust with the whole insurance system, which I do want to do a full episode on that and why it's so corrupt. But I'm used to being around people who feel like I do, who certainly shared my feelings during the events of 2020 and beyond, who did not fall for the propaganda. And because I've been surrounded by those people, because I've been that way really my whole life, for whatever reason, I've always sort of leaned toward more holistic solutions. Maybe it was because my dad was always after us to drink more water. Like I heard from the time I was young from my father, general and vascular surgeon, so he was in the conventional system. Had his problems back then with insurance, nothing like what it is now. But even so with my dad, he was very health conscious. Exercise, he played tennis, he skied, he taught me how to ski. We had a gym downstairs. He and my brothers used to work out, and I would kind of play around with that stuff occasionally. But my father always wanted us to be active and was always sort of health conscious and always talked about things like drinking water because it flushes your kidneys. Didn't like artificial iced tea mix. My mom always made real iced tea in the summertime. That was part of it. And there's always a part of me that intrinsically leaned toward more holistic solutions for any kind of medical problem. And then certainly the experiences that I've had that I document in my book reinforced my belief system. And I did find solutions through more holistic means. Just because you work with a functional medicine practitioner, some of the things I take are prescriptions, like bioidentical thyroid replacement and even liothyronine, which I believe is made in a lab, but I'm able to tolerate it and it works great for me. Liothyronine is the active form of the thyroid, T3. And I've mentioned before that in January of 2025, we cut my dosage in half of NP thyroid and liothyronine, and I'm still doing great. And I think that was due to making all the lifestyle changes, bringing down inflammation, eating real food, all of those things that functional medicine teaches, all of those functional medicine principles. So I'm doing well. It's been almost a year now with half the thyroid replacement that I used to take. But they still are a prescription. So Yeah, you could say that even the testosterone, the estradiol, those are also prescriptions, but they're also bioidentical hormones. So even though they are, you need a prescription to get them. You need someone who can write prescriptions to fill them for you. It's not the same thing in my mind as taking tons of medications like statins and other things that big pharma pushes. So I just want to make that clear. And in fact, when I was getting ready to categorize my book in Amazon, working with Michelle Kulp, and by the way, this episode is sponsored by Bestselling Author Program, founded by Michelle Kulp, who is my business associate. Michelle has many happy clients, and we can meet some of them here. And oh, look at this client. It looks very familiar, right? That's me. With Michelle's help, my book became an Amazon bestseller in 4 different categories, as you can see from the bestseller seal here. And what I was beginning to say was that when it came time to categorize my book, one of the options, one of the keywords I could have used, I believe, was natural medicine or something natural. And I chose not to use that keyword because I didn't want to mislead people. I think sometimes when we think something's natural, it means that you never take a prescription. And I'm not against prescriptions. I'm also on something called low dose naltrexone, which is something functional medicine also uses for Hashimoto's patients and even patients that have other types of autoimmune conditions because it balances the immune system. In low doses, it has been proven to balance the immune system. I have been on that for 5 years without a problem. But again, I need a prescription to fill that. Not to be confused with naltrexone, which is a medication used to treat addictions. Someone discovered that in lower doses, naltrexone helps the immune system. I'm on that as well. I was very careful when we were categorizing my book. I didn't want to mislead people into thinking that I just did this with supplements, for example. But I take targeted supplements based on my blood work, based on working with a functional medicine practitioner. I believe that people really should work with the right person, the right health professional, and get blood work done and then choose supplements based on what your body needs rather than just, I was guilty of this years ago too, just taking supplements because you think you're supposed to. Anyway, Michelle was wonderful in guiding me through this whole process and finding the right keywords on Amazon. And ultimately the title was My Escape from the Sick Care System, a guide to overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and autoimmune conditions with functional medicine. And not to get too deep into the weeds, but that subtitle contains the keywords it needed to contain so that when people search those terms, they would find my book. And when you work with the Bestselling Author Program, Michelle Kulp, and me, you receive the benefit of Michelle's more than a decade of experience helping authors like me become bestsellers, expand their brand and influence, reach as many readers as possible. And I'm going to get to that for me in this episode as well. I'm amazed just by how many conversations I have with people, how much this book is really needed out there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But other authors Michelle has worked with include Melissa Fike, Quantum Akashic Records Manifesting. Melissa also wrote another book called A Radical Approach to the Akashic Records, Master Your Life and Raise Your Vibration. Look at this one, The Cancer Industry, Crimes, Conspiracy, and the Death of My Mother. This was also a bestseller by Mark Sloan, another client of Michelle Kulp and the Bestselling Author Program. We also have Melissa Yost, Esquire, estate planning attorney in California. Why a Will Isn't Enough, How a Trust Can Help Your Loved Ones Avoid Probate, Minimize Family Conflict, and Bypass the Legal Mess Most Wills Leave Behind. I did read this book and review it. Fabulous book. And I know from my previous life being a content manager for an award-winning digital marketing agency whose many clients were estate planning attorneys, she's correct. I cannot even tell you how many blogs I have written on the topic of wills and trusts and why people need more than a will. And as a matter of fact, I have a couple of attorneys in my family, my brother and my sister. And when I got into that position and I was learning about estate planning, I recommended that both of them, and even my other brother who's not an attorney, he's a pathologist, that they should all look into perhaps putting their homes into a trust, just based on what I learned just from writing and researching blogs for estate planning attorneys. But Melissa's book also was a bestseller. You can see her there, and it explains why a will isn't enough and why a trust, exactly what it says, can help your loved ones avoid probate, minimize family conflict, and bypass the legal mess most wills leave behind. And she cites specific examples from her real life that inspired her to become an estate planning attorney. So Melissa is also another happy client of the Bestselling Author Program. And then we have Dr. Chris Cormier, DC, founder of the Nerve Health Institute. His best-selling book is called Feel Better Fast: How to Maximize Self-Healing Without Drugs, Injections, and Surgery Using the OWL Method: Oxygen, Water, and Light. Fabulous. Neurofeedback 101, Michael P. Cohen, Rewiring the Brain for ADHD, Anxiety, Depression, and Beyond Without Medication. So you can see that Michelle and I are very much on the same page when it comes to health, and many of her clients are as well. And these are fabulous books. I invite you to visit bestsellingauthorprogram.com, learn more about Michelle and her clients and how we can help you. Michelle handles all the publicity, setting your book up on Amazon, researching the keywords, and I will say that Amazon keywords are very different from Google keywords. This is the largest bookstore in the world, and you want to make sure that people can find your book. It's not just enough to have a ghostwriter who cares about you, is genuinely interested in you, and helps you produce a professional book in your voice that's also edited. You want to take that a step further and hire Michelle to get your book to bestseller status on Amazon and help you with the marketing side of things. Michelle and I work together. Her packages are full service. So whether you need a ghostwriter or if you have an existing manuscript and need an editor, we can help you. I handle the ghostwriting and editing. Michelle handles formatting, getting your book set up on Amazon, getting it set up on Balker, your book launch, helping you reach as many people as possible, your ideal audience, your ideal readers. We talk about what your goals are for your book. And in most cases, most of the clients we work with are looking to use their book to expand their brand and influence. And it does work. Out of all the people who say that they want to write a book, I think it's only 5% or less that actually take the time to do it. And nobody has to know if you work with a ghostwriter. I've worked with so many professionals. I mean, I think I've written over a dozen books, including for doctors, Navy SEALs, Major Generals in the Army, nonfiction leadership books, but I'm also working on a memoir for someone. It just depends on what your goals are. And when you work with Michelle and I, we will talk with you, determine your goals, and then put together a package that works for you. So I'm very grateful to the Bestselling Author Program for sponsoring True Voice Unfiltered. Okay, I also want to talk about something else Michelle created that I recently participated in, and that is the 30-day Tiny Book Challenge. This was absolutely amazing. I was part of her October 2025 class. If you are interested in this, after you hear a little bit more about it from me, you can go ahead and fill in your first name and your email address and get on her waiting list. As you can see, October sold out pretty quickly. The Tiny Book Challenge is wonderful for writers, whether you've already published a book or not. Maybe you're stuck, or maybe you haven't published a book before. Perhaps your business has a lot of aspects to it that you would like to discuss in a book to grow your audience and expand your business and brand, but you just don't know where to start. The Tiny Book Challenge is a wonderful place to begin. You join this group, and I believe this last class we had was maybe about 40 to 50 people. But even if you can't attend the weekly sessions, everything is recorded, so you can listen to it later. Michelle has a course. When you sign up for the Tiny Book Challenge, you have access to her Kajabi course. You'll get a login. And every week, Michelle explains the topics you'll be discussing in the next meeting. Everything from what defines a tiny book, which is basically 25 to 75 pages, after it's formatted. I never realized that tiny books were so popular on Amazon, but they really are. And so I'm going to get to mine because I did create a tiny book from this course that I will be releasing here in the next couple of weeks. But it was exciting to me that tiny books do well on Amazon. These short reads, people really like them. And so you can have a tiny book and publish it that way. And you can also use it as a springboard to write a longer book. This process really helps get the creative juices flowing. There's other writers in the group. Some of them are more experienced than others. Some have already written books. Some are new to the process, but we all learn from each other. It was a fabulous experience. I taught 1 week while Michelle was on vacation, and it's really exciting to me in our Facebook group to see people's books taking life, to see their book covers coming together. And as a matter of fact, one of the participants became an editing client of mine, and I love her book. I can't wait until it's published and out there. And that should be, all of our books should be released within the month of November, I'll say. I think we're getting them ready. A few of us are ready for formatting. And it just depends on how long that process takes, usually about a week or so. And then we'll be uploading them to Amazon and promoting them. It's pretty exciting. I wanted to mention the Tiny Book Challenge because we will be doing these regularly. And I would highly recommend, if you're interested, to get on the wait list now for the November 2025 Tiny Book Challenge. Just put your first name, your email address, click on Keep Me in the Loop, and Michelle will keep you in the loop. And I really look forward to seeing you there. Okay, so I wrote a tiny book, and I want to go ahead and share that with you all. This is a topic, very timely topic, one that I've had a lot of experience with, particularly in my years as a content manager with the award-winning digital marketing agency. Grateful to them for the lessons I've learned, for the experience I had to be a manager of people, not just a department, and really truly learning about SEO optimized content and developing that skill. Prior to becoming the content manager, I did spend a few years freelancing for 2 digital marketing agencies, and that's when I really started to learn about the importance of SEO optimized content, and certainly in my position as a content manager. Starting, I want to say it was late 2022, I believe, right around the time my father passed away. His anniversary will be coming up on December 1st, and it'll be 3 years. Rest in peace, Dad. Hard to believe it's been that long. But it was a very emotional time, obviously. And right around that time, the agency decided to bring on a consultant. And it was like a perfect storm because right around that time, too, AI was just emerging on the scene. And of course, everyone who does not write for a living or is not a professional writer that appreciates authenticity and human nuance thought it was the greatest thing since the invention of the airplane. As a matter of fact, this consultant told me that I was like a railroad magnate because I had legitimate concerns about AI. The 2 examples I cited with him at the time, because it felt like a runaway train. I mean, it really felt like AI's here and it's great and we're just going to use it and we're just going to crank out more blogs, more press releases, more lead magnets. We're going to be able to double our production because AI is so great. I believe the first thing I saw that was a big, huge red flag involved the constitutional scholar and attorney Jonathan Turley, who had to make a public statement letting people know that the completely fabricated AI story about him raping law students in Mexico was a completely fabricated AI story. What a terrible thing. I mean, what a character assassination. I can't even imagine being the target of that. That was the first thing I pointed out. The second thing was a woman, I believe was in Arizona, received a ransom call in her daughter's voice. AI had recreated her daughter's voice with the daughter claiming that she had been kidnapped and she needed all this ransom money. Unfortunately, the woman knew that her daughter was on a ski trip with her father, and so she knew enough not to fall for it. But it sounded just like her daughter and it was AI. I brought these 2 incidences up as examples of, hey, let's proceed with caution. I knew it was here to stay. I knew that we were going to have to use it. My goal was to use it wisely, not as a replacement for a writer, but as a writing assistant, as a tool. And I was told for bringing those concerns up that I was a railroad magnate who opposed the invention of the airplane. Crazy, really crazy. Just for simply asking that we proceed with caution and citing 2 examples of why we needed to proceed with caution. So, all of that to lead up to the topic of my tiny book. I want to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Yes, hopefully you can all see that. My tiny book is titled Books Mean Business. 5 Ways Publishing a Book with Authenticity Builds Authority, Trust, and Business Growth in the Age of AI. So what are the 5 ways? Well, you can find out when you read my book. It's scheduled for release, as I said, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But it was born from my participation in Michelle Kulp's fabulous Tiny Book Challenge, and I felt that this timely topic lent itself well to a book comprised of about 25 to 75 pages. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the word count is going to be just yet until it's formatted, but it will be somewhere within that range. And if you are curious about writing a tiny book yourself, I highly recommend getting on Michelle's waiting list for the next course, and I'm going to put all of those links in the show description. One thing that really helped me in this challenge was the fact that I've written several blogs on AI. And let me back up and just say, as a content manager, I learned the importance of publishing at least 1 blog a month. So I do publish at least 1 blog a month, and I also publish a blog for every podcast that I publish. So there will be a blog on my website for episode 14. Just very important for Google, for the EEAT, and I don't want to go too far down that road, but it is very important for your rankings to continue to blog regularly, add fresh content. One thing I do want to do with my website is go back and rewrite my web pages and SEO optimize them better. I think I was so eager to get my website up that I just wanted to give my web designer some content to get started. But one of the things I plan on doing now that I have a little bit of time is to just go back through every page, use my SEO tool, and really optimize these pages the way they should be. But I do it for every blog because it's pretty easy to do for blogs. And so I make sure that I publish at least 1 blog a month. And of course, doing podcasts every week, there's always a podcast blog going up every week. So having been in that practice of writing blogs regularly, and many of them having to do with AI, it was very easy for me to create my tiny book. And basically the chapters, the 5 ways or the 5 chapters, aligned nicely with a blog that I had written about AI and offering 5 reasons why you should proceed with caution. I did do some research, and I was happy to discover that authenticity still wins. And especially, let's think about it. Like, think about a book like mine, A Pain to Purpose story. I wanted my book to come through as me speaking to the reader. And based on, I'm up to 15 5-star reviews right now, I think that's the common thread among all of them, is that people appreciate that it sounded like they were having a conversation with me. I offered practical tips. It wasn't just a memoir, but they felt like they really got to know me. And AI just cannot capture my voice. Did I use it to help me create an outline, things like that? Yeah, sometimes I use it when I'm working with clients to create chapter section titles. Because in many cases with books, longer books now, I'm talking books that are 150 to 200 pages, I will, depending on the length of a chapter, may break things out. Or if a chapter covers several different stories or topics, it just depends on the client I'm working with. I will break it out so it's visually more appealing for the reader and create, like a catchy headline based on what they're about to read in that particular section of the chapter. ChatGPT is great for that. It's also great as an aggregator. I had one client who had a significant online presence between his website, his blogs, LinkedIn, other social media, YouTube, and it was great because it aggregated all of those links and put them together in one place for me. And then I created a document out of that, and it made it easy for me to reference a lot of his material, because that's very helpful as a ghostwriter. When you have a client who has a strong online presence, it's really easy to capture their brand because they've already put out so much content. You can kind of get to know their voice. And of course, we still did our regular calls. But that was a fun client to work with, and that was a great use of AI, was to help me kind of sort of gather all the links I needed into one place. But authenticity still wins. Particularly, as I said, if you have a pain to purpose story to share with your ideal clients, make authenticity your priority. Again, AI has its place, but using it to write an entire book is a great way to make your book sound generic, just like every other book out there, because there are a lot of people just putting in a prompt and just letting it ride, or not even really doing a lot of editing, just because they think it's saving them time. But you're going to turn off your audience if you do that. And especially if you work in a health-related profession. Let's say you're a functional medicine practitioner. And from what I've learned, many of them have a pain to purpose story, which is why they went into that profession to begin with. You want people to connect with your humanity, and it's such a hard sell, right? I mean, one of the reasons I wrote my book was because I wanted to appeal to patients who were still skeptical about having to fork over money to see a different practitioner, because everyone is just captured by the insurance system, and it's hard for people to wrap their head around having to pay outside of that system to actually get the proper help and the resolution they seek. So if you're a functional medicine practitioner writing a book, authenticity is even more important. You want to connect. You want readers to connect with your humanity. You want them to know, like, and trust you, because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And in my case with my book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, I'm hoping, it was my goal, that my experience as a patient would help other people who are also dealing with autoimmune conditions, and there are many of them out there. I'm going to get to those stories here today, to find the help they need. And I'm not saying they have to work with the same people I worked with. That's why I created a guide to finding the right practitioner. I welcome people to contact me, and I'll do everything I can to point them in the right direction. But I wrote my book in my voice so that it comes across as genuine and sincere, because it is. It comes across because it inherently is genuine and sincere. And I shared my personal journey to appeal to other people, to help them understand why it's necessary to pay for the right practitioner who's going to get the results you need and basically turn your life around. Because the way I looked at it was like, man, I start feeling better, I'm healthy, there's no stopping me, right? I can make up that money. I can make way more money than I was making before because I feel good. But it does require a lifestyle change and ongoing maintenance, which I do talk about in the book. So I could never write that book with AI, even if I wanted to. If you're in a health-related profession and you are, let's just call it holistic health, functional medicine, if you're outside of the conventional system and you really are trying to attract new patients, they want to connect with your humanity. And the only way you're going to get them to know, like, and trust you is if you write in your original voice. And because no matter how much AI tries to sound human, it's not. So Books Mean Business is a concise, practical guide that shows you how writing and publishing a nonfiction book infused with your authentic story and expertise can help you build long-term credibility in an era of artificial voices, attract ideal clients who already trust your authority, turn your knowledge into an evergreen content strategy that sells, multiply your income by writing a series that strengthens your brand, leverage your book to land speaking engagements, media coverage, and partnerships. We kind of already covered bullet number 1, but you will build long-term credibility among all these artificial voices that are out there, because a lot of people are taking the lazy way out and just letting AI write their book. By writing your book in your voice, even if working with a ghostwriter like me, we will capture your voice. We will do Zoom calls. I will find all of your links online if you have any, your other blogs, anything else that you've written, maybe any interviews that you've done, and I will make sure that your voice is infused throughout the book. And any good ghostwriter would do the same. And that will help you build credibility and help you stand out from the plethora of AI-generated content. Second bullet, you will attract ideal clients who already trust your authority. It goes back to know, like, and trust. The more honest you are, the more sincere you are in your book, you come across that way, it's going to appeal to your ideal clients, and they're going to begin to trust you. You can turn your knowledge into an evergreen content strategy that sells. So once you have a book, and I recommend books, but once you get that first one out there, you've already distinguished yourself. You're already head and shoulders above your competitors, because most people who say they want to write a book never get around to doing it. They never get around to hiring a ghostwriter. If they don't have time to do it, they never engage with the process and work with someone like Michelle who can help them get the book out there and promote it properly. So you, by doing that, will turn your knowledge into an evergreen content strategy that sells. Social media posts that go viral are wonderful. Do they really generate business? They disappear and then they're gone. But an evergreen asset like a book is there forever, and particularly as you add more books to your series. And using the functional medicine example, if you work with thyroid patients, for example, your first book could be about hypothyroidism, right, and how you help that. And maybe the next book talks about the sex hormones, estradiol, testosterone. You could write a whole book about why testosterone matters for women, because a lot of women don't know that. You could move on to other hormones, other aspects of healing, such as eating whole food. There could be a whole series in that particular profession. I could say the same about accounting, about financial planners. You multiply your income by writing a series that strengthens your brand. So you get that first book out there, leads into the next book, leads into the next book. And as I have learned, they can be tiny books. They don't all have to be super long. Now, in our regular package, the Bestselling Author Program package, I'm not talking about tiny books now, but in a package for what we would call a standard book, those books are anywhere between 150 to 200 pages. And sometimes that's needed. I love the tiny book concept, though, because if you're struggling and if you're not sure what to write, it can really help you start. And maybe you extrapolate from that tiny book that you write a larger book. All different directions you could take this, but it's very exciting. And the course is amazing because you get the support of other writers, Michelle and me. We also have a Facebook group. And I love that creativity. I love working with other authors and learning from other people. It's very exciting. You can multiply your income by writing a series that strengthens your brand. And then finally, you can leverage your book to land speaking engagements, media coverage, and partnerships. And I go into more detail about that in the book. But podcast producers and hosts are always looking for credible guests that have something to share. And if you have a book, that gives you a huge amount of credibility. It's the perception. If you've taken the time to sit down and put your expertise into a book, then you are somebody worth highlighting on a show. In my case, I created a spreadsheet. All the podcasts that I listen to, I reached out to, I created a media kit, and I've landed several interviews. One of them I pre-recorded. It won't be out until February. I'm super excited about it, though. It was with Lisa Fisher Said, who's one of my regular listens. She is amazing. I just love her. What a wonderful person. Fun, high energy, sincere, genuine. I had the best time recording that episode, so I'm looking forward to my interview with Lisa Fisher Said coming out in February. But you can leverage your book to land speaking engagements, media coverage, and partnerships. So right now I'm focused on podcasts. I am going to turn my attention to speaking engagements, and I highly recommend spreadsheets. A very good friend of mine that I used to work with in a previous life swears by spreadsheets, and not that I'm not advanced with them at all, believe me, but I use them to kind of keep me organized, and it's wonderful. And I'll check off, in the case of trying to get podcast hosts to book me on their shows, I would put the name of the show, the date I reached out, if I was booked on the show or not. And, I just have different columns that kind of let me know maybe I should reach out again. I'll put the date when I sent the initial contact. And if I feel like enough time has gone by, I'll resend it or check in with them again. Highly recommend that. Books Mean Business, 5 Ways Publishing a Book with Authenticity Builds Authority, Trust, and Business Growth in the Age of AI will be available in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. And I will put links in the show description for Michelle Kulp's 30-day Tiny Book Challenge, and also a link to the Best-Selling Author Program, so you can learn more if you're interested. Getting back to my book, My Escape from the Sick Care System, A Guide to Overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and Autoimmune Conditions with Functional Medicine, a few interesting things have happened to me recently that signaled to me that this was the right book at the right time. I do have 2 more books coming in this, I'm calling it my health trilogy. The second book will go into more detail about a thyroid storm I had, which I now believe was due to a compounding pharmacy mistake, which led to an 8-day uninsured hospital stay, which really opened my eyes to the corruption in the hospital system the insurance system, which I already knew was corrupt from my own father, but it's only gotten so much since the ACA was enacted. Unfortunately, we don't have catastrophic plans anymore, but I would recommend, or I did before the ACA destroyed catastrophic plans, would be have a high deductible catastrophic plan in the, God forbid, event that you end up in the hospital after an accident or something, and then pay for everything else yourself. And that's what I do. I save my money. I have a little health care fund for my functional medicine appointments. And that's what I do. Anyway, that will be my second book in this trilogy. The last book in the trilogy is going to talk about the events of 2020, because I realized by the time the events of 2020 rolled around, I was fully awake, and I believe it was just my own experience over the years and questioning conventional medicine and conventional systems that caused me to say, something's not right here. I don't trust this. I'm not buying what they're selling. That book will be about my peaceful resistance. Hopefully next year I'll release the second one. I'm having a lot of fun with the tiny books, and there's so many things I want to write about, but I also have a lot of clients to keep up with. But getting back to book one in this trilogy, a couple of real life experiences I had proved to me the validity of writing this book at this time. So the first one, I want to say this without giving away any names or circumstances, but I just spent 3 months visiting my mom and the rest of the family in the Philly area. And I always drive every year with my dog. And so this was the day before I drove back, and a friend wanted to meet my sister and me for breakfast on that day. She and my sister are the same age, and they're about 5 years older than me. And we're sitting there having breakfast, and it was really nice. It was a great time. But all of a sudden, she looks at me and says, "What medications are you on?" And I was like, "What?" And I said, "Not really on anything." Now remember, I am not against prescriptions, okay? But I said to her, "Well, I'm on bioidentical thyroid replacement and some other thyroid replacement that do require a prescription, but I don't really consider them medications in the sense of statins and other big pharma products, Formin." And she basically looked at me and said, "Oh, well, just wait until you get up to be our age," because as I said, they're about 5 years older. And she looked at my sister, and I didn't say anything, but I thought, how sad that this person just expects that everybody's going to be on a lot of medications when they reach a certain age. Now, she's not wrong, because unfortunately most Americans are on a lot of medications. And I realized in that conversation that I've been in my little bubble with a lot of my friends who feel the same way I do, and certainly working with functional medicine practitioners and different groups online that I'm part of. You seem to think that everybody thinks this way, but it's really not true. I don't want to get too specific. I could talk about something else that came up in the conversation, but I'm going to leave it at that. Good person, let me just clarify, wonderful person, genuine, decent, kind, good-hearted person, which makes it even harder, to know that they are very locked in to the conventional system. And when we were talking about going to the gym, I can say this other thing that happened, this other part of the conversation. I was stressing with her the importance of lifting weights and building muscle, and I had that earlier that morning. I met my sister at the gym and showed her different machines and weights and what she should start doing, and she's going to start doing, because strong muscle means strong bone. And we want to be strong as we're aging. And this other friend of ours looked at me and said, "Well, oh God, no, I haven't gone to Planet Fitness," which is my gym. "I haven't gone there since COVID." And I'm thinking, it's 2025. It's okay. It's safe to go back to the gym. So that's just an example of how good people just are conned, is a strong word, but I feel like it, conned by the system. It's all they know. They're not interested in looking outside of it. They think they're doing the right thing. And it's just very sad to me. I mean, I want to throw something through the TV every time I'm watching a football game and a pharma commercial comes on. Every time I'm watching an episode of HGTV, pharma commercial. It's just like clockwork. And if that doesn't prove who's running the show, I don't know what does. I could also say I'm sick of seeing commercials for health insurance. Pharma, health insurance, hospital system, all things I've written about in another book that I ghost wrote for an orthopedic surgeon in Miami who's been fighting the good fight for many, many years. I will talk about these things in a future book and a future episode. I'll delve into this more. I'm excited because someone reached out to me about hosting another orthopedic doctor, an orthopedic surgeon who I believe is based in New Jersey. And she wants to come on and talk about the insurance system. So I'm really excited about that. And then I have a doctor, I don't want to say anyone's names until they actually come on the show. I have another holistic doctor out of Oklahoma who has agreed to be a guest on my show. So I'm very excited about that. I have some wonderful episodes coming up because I really would like to delve more into these topics with professionals who are actually working with patients and dealing with the insurance system. It was bad enough when my dad was dealing with it in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's magnified that 100 times today. It's so much worse than it even was back then when my father was fighting to be able to practice medicine and provide the patient care that he felt that they needed. So, but it's so much worse today. I want to bring on a lot of today's doctors who are in the trenches dealing with it. The other conversation I was privy to the other night involved a young girl. I was out to dinner. I'm back home in Florida. Went out to dinner with my friend, and we bumped into someone she knows from physical therapy. So this friend of mine had a workplace accident, and she's been going through physical therapy, and this is where she met this other young woman. We just happened to be eating there, and she looked across the way and said, "Oh, that's so-and-so. I know her from physical therapy." And she invited her to come have dinner with us because she was by herself, and it was a lot of fun. So she was about, I believe, 32-ish, early 30s. Loved meeting her. She had such a bubbly, outgoing personality. And when she asked me what I did, my friend said, "Oh, she's an author." And she told her the name of my book. And like this girl's eyes lit up. Not only that, she got right on her phone. And as I was telling her about the book, she's like, "Done, ordered. I have an autoimmune, a friend has an autoimmune, she knows other people that have autoimmune conditions." I mean, it's crazy how many people have autoimmune conditions. Everyone I talk to about my book says the same thing, that either they or someone they know or many people they know are struggling with autoimmune conditions. And that's one of the reasons why I'm keeping the Kindle version of my book at 99 cents. I want to reach as many people as possible. I do recommend it in paperback if you can. It's $14.97 in paperback because there's exercises at the end of each chapter. And if you're anything like me, you like to write notes in paperbacks and highlight things. I've been that way, I guess, from my days of being an AP English student in high school and learning how to highlight and take notes in the margin. It has always stayed with me, and I am a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to books. I really prefer a paperback over a Kindle. However, I also understand the appeal of a Kindle, and in this case, I would rather people have the information they need, and I want to keep it at 99 cents in the Kindle version. So it's at Amazon.com. It's called My Escape from the Sick Care System, a guide to overcoming PCOS, Hashimoto's, and autoimmune conditions with functional medicine. As of this recording, November 8th, I have 15 5-star reviews. And I went through some of them in a previous episode, so I'm not going to do that here. In the Customer Say section, the AI summary says, customers find the book empowering and encouraging, with one review highlighting its clear and compassionate framework for uncovering root causes. The book is practical and easy to follow, with one customer noting it provides easy to understand explanations of medical test terminology. And that makes me really happy because I did my best to make things understandable, because it can get rather confusing. I did learn a lot about blood work through this whole journey. And I would say from the time I started working with functional medicine practitioners, they kind of bring you in, they explain the blood work, they tell you what these lab tests are about. Many of them I never had before because conventional medicine doesn't run tests like fasting insulin. And that was the first time I ever had a fasting insulin test, was when I started working with functional medicine. And I've since come to realize how critical that test actually is. So I wanted to share everything I've learned with other people in a way that was relatable and understandable, because I understand that it can get confusing. And I appreciate the education. That's one thing I love about functional medicine, and especially working with Dr. Amy. Shout out to Dr. Amy Horniman. I am now in her progression program. Prior to that, I was in her, I'm not sure what we called it, but maybe Fix Your Thyroid program. Basically, it was when I was a patient still trying to reach optimization. I had gotten to a certain point could not get over the finish line. Amy's program helped me do that. It was a 5-month program, well worth the investment. It was as educational as it was practical. So, there was lab work involved, there was a nurse practitioner involved, prescriptions for the right things based on my blood work, supplement recommendations, all of that, and also a course about the thyroid. And going deeper into a lot of the topics she talks about on her podcast, which is also highly educational. I highly recommend listening to The Thyroid Fixer. Dr. Amy's podcast is among many that I include at the end of my book as recommended listening, so you can learn from professionals in this field. I'm always quick to point out that I am just a patient sharing my story. I am not a medical professional. I am not dispensing medical advice. I am just sharing my experience and inviting you to seek out functional medicine practitioners. Not just that, but the right one for you. And my guide is a guide to asking the right questions, knowing what to look for, including red flags to look for, things you should avoid. It's a practical guide to finding the right functional medicine practitioner for you. And I'm always happy to talk to somebody if they have any questions after reading that. You can find me if you go to my website at truevoicewritingservices.com and click on contact. You can complete the form there, even if you're not interested in learning about ghostwriting or editing services. If you want to just find out more about me and my journey and maybe get some guidance on where to find the right functional medicine practitioner, you can fill that out. I'm happy to get on a call and guide you. Again, I'm not the doctor, so I can just kind of point you to some resources you can then pursue to see if you can find the right person. But my advice would be to get started right away on that journey of finding someone, getting that appointment, and getting started, whether you have to put it on a credit card, which is something I did and I had in my head. I will pay this off in 3 months. I set a goal. I paid it off. I did Amy's program. I got to optimization, and now I'm maintaining it through lifestyle supplements and half the thyroid replacement I was on before. So that is actually saving me money too. That's wonderful. But let me tell you, if I still had to take the same amount of thyroid replacement I was taking when I first started, that would have been fine with me too, because I feel so much better. And once you start feeling great, you want to keep feeling great. And you're willing to do whatever you need to do to stay in that health, that vibrant health condition, and distinguish yourself from so many other people out there. Once you reach optimization, how many other people in your world you can help and inspire and help them feel better again? Because I'm just continually amazed at how many people are just silently suffering out there, being told that their lab results are normal, that it's all in their head, that they should eat less and move more, all the tropes, because many of these doctors in the system don't go outside of the box research and learn new things. I'm not condemning doctors. My book does not condemn doctors. My own father was a general and vascular surgeon. I will just say, though, it's frustrating as a patient when you're working with somebody on your insurance system. This is not their fault, but they get 7 minutes to spend with a patient, and that is not enough time to delve into what's really going on, what is really at the heart of their problems. And a lot of times they're multifaceted. It's not just one thing. I mean, the body is a system. That's another thing. When I know it goes back to money, but somehow we've isolated body parts. And so we have a doctor for this and a doctor for that. And no one is really looking at the body as a whole and how everything interconnects. Functional medicine does, however. So that's my little speech on find a good functional medicine practitioner and start feeling better. Not even just better, get optimized. You'll love it. All right, everybody. Well, I think that's all for me today. I hope you enjoyed episode 14. I know we were kind of all over the place. Look for my tiny book. I will be sharing that soon. It'll be published on Amazon in the next couple of weeks. Books mean business. If you want to purchase my book for 99 cents in Kindle, you can find it on Amazon, My Escape from the Sick Care System. I'll put all the links in the show description. But man, it would be my wish for everyone out there who's suffering to find the help they need to start feeling great and start living life to the fullest. So think about it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Be well, and I'll see you on the next episode.